I'm Catherine, and I teach at the University of Virginia. I teach business. I teach marketing. Well, I was always told that I was adopted. I think that is the advice that social workers give parents who adopt. And so my parents would read me stories, for example, Goldilocks and the three adopted bears rather than the three bears, so that it was part of my normal conversation. But I really didn't realize I was adopted until one of the neighborhood children's told me I wasn't my mother's child. And so that surprised me because I didn't realize that adoption meant that my mother didn't give birth to me. So that's how I found out that I was adopted. And then at that point, then I thought I was special, that I was chosen, and I needed to tell everybody. I always had a positive thought about adoption. I think when I was about, I would say 15 years old, that's when I really, really wanted to know who my mother was or who I looked like. I was adopted into a family where it wasn't obviously noticeable that I was adopted. I wasn't completely different from a physical perspective, but I just knew that there was someone, or there was two people that I might look like. But I think my overall sense was just gratitude that I exist, that I'm alive. I didn't think I was ever going to track my birth mother or biological parents. I knew that the woman who had given me up had to do something very, very, very hard. Even though I didn't know her, I thought, how hard would it be to carry a child and have to give up your child? And that she must be so good. And that one day in heaven I would meet her. And there I could tell her I was thankful. But I didn't need to seek this out and make this a really long, drawn out experience of trying to find her, and that my identity was dependent on finding my birth mother. I received the inspiration, though. I was 33 years old. I was going down to visit some family in Montgomery, Alabama. At the time I was living in North Carolina. And I thought about doing a family tree. And I had been reading about family trees and thought, oh, that would be really neat to do a family tree. And then thought, and this is all in maybe a span of an hour, why would I do that? Why don't I find my birth mother? So I looked at the laws, and in Alabama, as of August 2000, you can unseal your birth certificate. And I had no idea. I think it's one of the few states where that's allowed. And then when I did some more research, where are these records? Yeah, they're in Montgomery, Alabama, and I was planning on renting a car and driving down in 3 days. So when I arrived in Montgomery, an hour before I was supposed to meet up with some family, I went down and requested that my birth certificate be unsealed and that it be given it. That was an amazing story because the people at the records place came out after 20 minutes. I requested it, given my forms, and the director came out and said, well, this is very unusual. Your file has already been unsealed. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he comes out 20 minutes later, well, you're probably less than 0.001%. Your father's information is in there as well. I waited another 20 minutes and then was given all the records. And that's when I found out both my birth mother and my biological father, their names and addresses and contact information, including all their medical history as well. Well, I think the most powerful part of that day, at least that moment, was unsealing the birth certificate and realizing that her name was my name, that it was Catherine, Kathryn, the Irish spelling, and there's 15 ways to spell Catherine. I knew that my parents who had named me had no idea that my birth mother's name was Catherine. And it was actually an argument when I was being named because my grandfather, who was from the County Kerry in Ireland, really wanted me to be named Kerry, Kerry. My parents decided eventually to name me Catherine. That was my foster name. I was in foster care for that month right after birth. And it was the more traditional way, spelled with a C, but my parents decided to pacify my grandfather that it be changed to the Irish spelling. So here all this stuff is happening around how I'm named, and then 33 years unseal the birth certificate and realize that I have the same name as my mother. The laws changed in October 2000, and then within I think 3 or 4 weeks, the date was on there when all that information was sent. So then I got really excited because I thought, oh my gosh, these people want to find me. This isn't one of these situations where you contact someone out of the blue and then they don't know if they want to have anything to do with you. This was a situation of, oh my gosh, both people want to find me. And that was really amazing. That evening, I was really terrified. It was really difficult to get up the nerve to call my birth mother, but I called her, and I was very nervous. I called, I think I may have hung up the first time because it went to an answering machine. I called, I hung up, and then I called back and just said, I said who I was. I said I was born March 5th, 1976, and she later tells me that that's when she knew I was her daughter. But then I forgot to leave my name. So she called me back 20 minutes later, and I think I know what I said, because this is true. Because I know that there are people that are given up for adoption that might believe that they were abandoned or rejected. But I knew that this must have been a difficult choice, and I was grateful. And it was 70. I was born in 76, so abortion was legal at the time. And I said, thank you so much for not aborting me. And that's when she says, I've loved you for 33 years. I've never stopped loving you. And that, I couldn't believe it. That didn't make any sense to me because she didn't know me. I, at first, was sad. I thought she must be disappointed because I don't look like her, and she's beautiful. But I think just given her kindness and love, that eventually dissipated that thought of she must be disappointed. It was difficult. She did, and I'm so glad she was honest, tell me how I was conceived during that first meeting, and I was horrified. And at that point, it turned more into, well, she must hate me because I must remind her of this man and this violent act. And that was really painful. So here I don't look anything like this beautiful woman, and I must look like him, and that must be a horrible reminder. So that was difficult. It was not easy to hear. It never in a million years crossed my mind that I was conceived in rape. Never. I just thought it was a 16-year-old girl who got pregnant by her boyfriend and then made the right choice not to abort me and to give me life and to do the best thing and to give me up for adoption so that I would have a better life. But never in a million years did I think I would be conceived in rape. That wasn't possible. Well, first, before even talking about my birth father, I thought this woman must be a saint. Or is she really for real that she actually loves me and she doesn't hate me because I must remind her of him? And then when she said that she actually met him and reconciled, then it just confirmed that she's a saint, because it doesn't even seem possible. It's really beautiful. It was very difficult to believe, because I can't imagine anything worse happening to anybody. And here's someone who I knew that I loved, even though I didn't know her, and I hated that she had been hurt that way. And I didn't want her to hurt. I mean, at first, I didn't want to have anything to do with them for two reasons. One, I was just disgusted, and number two, I didn't want to do anything to challenge my relationship with my birth mother, which was so precious and so important to me that I didn't want to do anything that would compromise that relationship. I ended up myself, I think 2 weeks later, contacting him through Facebook and saying, I think I'm your natural daughter. I heard from him probably within an hour, and he was ecstatic. He was absolutely, he's a really hyper person. I didn't know that at the time, but he was just absolutely ecstatic that he had a daughter. And he had, amazingly, he has another daughter. She's 21 years old. Her name is Carrie, and she, it was her birthday that day. So we had actually reunited on his other daughter's birthday, and he was ecstatic. I just couldn't believe it. He told me very early on, well, you come from a dysfunctional family. And he had 9 brothers and sisters from different marriages. I mean, they were, his mother had different marriages. There was alcoholism, drug abuse, sexual addictions, just a lot of just dysfunction. And he didn't hide it. It was pretty amazing that he thought that I needed to know how dysfunctional they were. I guess that didn't surprise me. In some ways it explained how something so evil could happen. I don't have an addiction myself, but to know that someone's free will is not completely involved once an addiction happens, and that it now started to make sense. Yeah, so when I first met him, when I first talked to him on the phone, I didn't know if I wanted to have anything to do with him, even though it was good to know this information. I didn't know if I would have been at that point fine just moving on and not having anything to do with him. It's kind of like, okay, well, I know about this, and there's this chapter, and now I'm moving on. But he really wanted me to be in his life. So he really wanted to see me and wanted me to come visit. So I told him I didn't know if I would. I didn't know. I kind of put it on the back burner, or at least wanted to table it before I processed, and before I had an honest conversation with how I was conceived. Because if there was no repentance, meaning no remorse, I didn't want to have much to do with him. I really didn't have room in my life for irresponsible men. So I wasn't going to have him in my life. So I did confront him a couple days later when we talked again. He didn't remember a lot of details, but he knew he was wrong. And if I filled him in on things that my birth mother had told me, he did not deny anything. That was very important to me, that he was honest, and that he wanted to have continued communication with me. If he wasn't honest, we wouldn't have moved forward. In the meantime, he really wanted to meet me. He sent me a laptop computer with a webcam on it so that we could webcam each other. And I never webcammed, and it was a little weird to meet my biological father webcamming. And we eventually, after a couple of weeks, agreed that I would fly down to Mobile for me to meet him. Meeting him was really good, but what was most profound is when I went to dinner with he and his wife and my biological mother. I couldn't believe that she wanted to share a meal with the man who had raped her. So she told me she had forgiven him, and she had even said, even when I told her, I won't have any communication with this man if you don't want me to. She said, I am thrilled that this man wants to be in your life. So many men want to leave the past in the past. Even if they're divorced, it's this idea that was my past life or past family and moving on. And she said she was thrilled. So that blew my mind. Another confirmation that she's a saint. And so the fact that we were going to sit down and have a meal, and I didn't know how awkward it was going to be, and it wasn't awkward at all. It was really amazing. And she even said to me afterwards, she said, I could be friends with Bruce. This was like, he's just such a faithful person now, and he's just had such a conversion and amazing transformation in my life. I mean, in his life. What's amazing, though, that maybe she's projecting because she had had a transformation, obviously, in her life to be able to forgive. That's supernatural, to be able to forgive someone who had done such an evil act to her. So that was remarkable. And then for my last day in Mobile, a few days later, for them to go to Mass with me, we were in daily Mass, and she's sitting on my right, and he's sitting on my left. And he cried the entire time, bent over in tears the entire time. He wanted to, I don't know who said, I think it was my biological mother, said, let's go light a candle. And we had lit a candle in that church a couple of days before, but this time let's do Bruce. And so we suggested it to him, and he's just tears and tears and tears. And we go over to this statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And the Sacred Heart of Jesus is just the realization that God is giving his unbelievable mercy to us. His heart is overflowing with mercy. And we walk over there with all these candles. We each light our own candle and then one together. And my birth mother takes his hand and takes my hand. I couldn't believe it. Here she is holding the hand of the man who had raped her. And she looks at him and she said, Bruce, I forgive you. And I thank you so much for my daughter. I couldn't believe it. How could someone be grateful of her daughter? How could she be grateful that she was raped because she has me in her life? That is not human love. That's not possible, and it only is from God. 'Cause how could someone love that way? My biological father, given he was from a home of many addictions and had many addictions himself, I think at one time he was even dealing drugs. He was pretty rough. He did end up having a conversion, a major transformation in his life as a result of his other daughter. He was dating a woman, and they got pregnant, and he, when he saw her and saw how beautiful she is, he wanted a different life for her, and he wanted to be a good father, and he was only allowed to see the child every couple of weeks when she went with her mother to church. And so he would tag along even though he wasn't faithful. He wasn't a practicing Christian. And he had a major conversion. And so, yeah, even there, here's an unwed mother, an unexpected, unwanted pregnancy. And the result of that child has really changed this person's life. Now 2 children have really changed his life. And he's ecstatic about it. And the state of his soul is different because of these children. I was able to, first it's God, because ultimately God was my father. So I wasn't looking for him to be a father to me. So I didn't have these expectations. But second, it was the forgiveness of my birth mother that allowed that to happen. I wouldn't have been able to have a relationship without that, I think, forgiveness. Because that was freedom, not only for her, but it was freedom for me to be able to do that. And to also see the good in him. I think if I didn't know him or meet him, it'd be easy to remain disgusted. But when you meet another human person and you see the transformation that God can have in them, then you can't help to respond in love. Yeah, for those who were raped or conceived an unwanted pregnancy, unexpected pregnancy, who did abort, that forgiveness is for you as well, and that I can understand how you would make that choice, given how difficult the situation is, and that our society says it's okay, and that in so many cases I know that you may have been pressured, but even just from fear, that that on a very human level that is understandable, but it's hard for me to imagine that no one is able to move on with their life, that it's still very, very painful, and that God can forgive you as well. But the good news is your baby does exist, and your baby may not be here talking to you here, but your baby is in heaven, and that your baby is interceding for you in many ways and is closer to God than anybody, because he or she is innocent, and that you can have a relationship with your child. It may not be the same relationship like my mother and I get to have, but you can have that, and you can ask for forgiveness from your child, and then have a full life, knowing that you can give to other people, your spouse, your future children, or your existing children, the love that you do have in your heart and the love that God gives you.